The void beyond Pluto glimmered with distant starlight, but for Admiral Kairos Varine, the darkness held no mystery, only imminent victory. From his command throne on the bridge of the Tyrant's Gaze, he surveyed the constellation of monitors that charted the progress of Operation Hammerfall. Billions of souls across the Empire had prepared for this day. Earth would fall. It was only a matter of hours. The Empire's confidence for centuries. The Imperial Data Council had cataloged every known civilization, assigning each a threat. Rating from 0 to 10, Earth sat at a comfortable 2, technologically backward, politically fractured, and militarily negligible. Rumors of human creativity, hacking, guerrilla resistance, experimental physics had been dismissed as cultural quirks, not true weapons. To the Empire, Earth was ripe for annexation, its resources plentiful and its populace easily subdued. Behind Varine, his staff bustled. Tactical officers plotted the fleet's course through the Oort cloud, while communications liaisons tapped messages from the senatorial palace on Cygnus Prime. Weeks ago, the Senate had issued the Edict of Submission. No world could legitimately resist the Imperial Pax. Earth, isolated and ignorant, would soon learn that lesson. In his mind, Varine rehearsed the final moments of capitulation. He imagined the trembling Earth Council, kneeling before his holoportrait, pledging fealty to the throne. As the Tyrant's Gaze adjusted its trajectory, Varine allowed himself a thin smile. The next 5 minutes of Earth's history would be their last unsullied ones. Dawn on Earth, meanwhile, 1.2 billion kilometers closer to the sun, morning broke over human civilization in a fragile dance of light and shadow. In Geneva, the headquarters of the International Space Coalition, ISC thrummed with routine activity. Satellite calibrations, telemetry checks, ecological surveys. Commander Leah Chen, 42 years old and one of ISC's most seasoned officers, peered at her console with habitual intensity. Status report, she prompted. Lieutenant Rajesh Patel responded without looking up. All solar observation satellites nominal. Earth weather grid stable. No anomalies in deep space monitoring for the last 20 minutes. Leah leaned back, folding her arms. Despite her disciplined demeanor, she felt an undercurrent of unease for months. Whispers had surfaced in off-the-record channels, uncharacteristic. Subspace readings, unexplained gravitational ripples near Mars. Bursts of unknown radio chatter at ultra-low frequencies. None of these events had been confirmed, and ISC's cautious leadership had chalked them up to solar flares or sensor glitches. She tapped a command, opened the Lagrange to far-field scanner feed. I want a full spectral analysis since midnight UTC. Patel's eyes flickered with curiosity. Yes, ma'am. He overrode several manual locks, and on the central display a web of color-coded data blossomed, dozens of faint signatures, each representing a drifting object or field fluctuation. Most were familiar cometary dust clouds, micrometeoroid, streams, but one arcane trace pulsed with irregular intensity. Zoom on that, Leah instructed, pointing to the blip at the edge of the grid. The view narrowed. A sleek, oblong shape drifted against the black, haloed by a diffuse energy glow. Leah felt her pulse quicken. Transponders? She asked. None. No thermal emissions either. It's dark energy cooled, almost invisible to passive sensors. Until you actively scan for mass density anomalies. Leah exchanged a glance with Patel. Patch me through to President Diallo, please. Stirring the Johnshalfa world away. In the subterranean war rooms of Beijing's Global Defense Alliance GDA, alarms flickered red and orange. General Wang Lei stood beneath a colossal holomap of Earth. His jaw clenched. Reports had poured. In a sudden blackout of lunar communications relays, erratic power surges across Eurasia, and the ISC's frantic request for an emergency summit. No one knew why, but everyone knew how dangerous it could become. Lieutenant Ko Wang barked. Fully mobilize the GDAS orbital interceptor fleet. I want drones and fighters scrambled to Elta within the hour, and put the defense grid on level for readiness. Yes, General, Ko replied, fingers dancing over a touchscreen. Deep beneath the GDA bunker, engineers raced to override safeties. Reactors hum with growing intensity, while high-powered railguns calibrated their targeting rays. Every nation on Earth could still hide their guns behind treaties, but alliances forged in crisis could move faster than any legislature. A world on edge be the time Leah connected with President Diallo, an unflappable stateswoman who had navigated global crises from pandemics to climate disasters. The unease had rippled through every capital. The United Nations Emergency Council convened. Via secure HoloLink, ambassadors hovered over digital days, their faces pale. "Madam President," Leah's voice crackled, "we have a foreign signature at L2, unregistered and hostile. I recommend full defensive posture, all space traffic grounded, scrambling of interceptors, and authorization to engage if we cannot identify them within 10 minutes. Diallo's eyes narrowed. "Commander Chen, how confident are you this isn't a sensor fault?" "Negative, ma'am. Cross-spectral analysis from 3 independent arrays confirms real mass density and 0 transponder codes. If they're cloaked, their shields are enough to mask conventional detection." Silence fell over the council. Then Diallo's hand tapped the desk. "Understood. Leah, you have authorization to operate at your discretion. Contact our GDA counterparts and coordinate, but proceed with caution if that is a prelude to invasion. We need more intel before we fire the first shot." Leah exhaled. "Yes, Mr. President. I'll keep you updated." The calm before the storm in the tyrant's gaze. Admiral Varen's monitors snapped from real-time feeds to static. The Empire's long-range sensors suddenly blank. He frowned, irritation flashing across his features. "Status," he demanded. Chief Sensor Officer Helix responded. Voice flat. "All deep space channels disrupted. Likely localized anomaly. Cannot establish new link until it dissipates." Varen's lips tightened. "Patch me through to the Grand Vizier." The Vizier's holoportrait shimmered into view. A stooped figure draped in ceremonial robes, eyes like dark opals. "Admiral Varen," the Vizier intoned. "Your arrival time at Earth orbit is in 6 hours. Why the disturbance?" Varen's hand hovered above the comm panel. "My sensors detected a spacetime perturbation. No signs of hostile ships, but our rays are dying." The Vizier's gaze flickered. "Strange. Our intelligence indicated no defensive networks of that caliber. Perhaps a solar phenomenon. You should proceed as planned." Something in the Vizier's dismissal stung Varen's pride. He straightened. "Yes, Grand Vizier. The operation continues." With a stiff nod, he cut the feed. As the tyrant's gaze resumed course toward Earth, an undercurrent of foreboding threaded through the crew. In every legion across the 7th Fleet, whispers began to spread. Earth may be more dangerous than predicted. Nightfall on Earth when Leah Chen finally left. The ISC command deck. Geneva's streets lay bathed in golden lamplight. Civilians paused in their evening routines. Joggers slowed. Cafe patrons glanced upward, unaware of the looming threat. All around the world, ordinary life persisted. Families on balconies. Fishermen hauling nets. Children playing street soccer. Yet, behind the scenes, a silent race accelerated. Engineers at the Japanese Aerospace Consortium reconfigured quantum radar arrays. The European Space Agency shifted probe trajectories to cover blind spots. Private orbital defense firms alerted their mercenary fleets. Even rival nations found themselves working in uneasy harmony. Driven by the primal instinct to survive, Leah paused on the bridge exit as her assistant, Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez, jogged up. "Commander, the Chinese interceptors launched 15 minutes ago. They've reached L2, but still no visual on the object." Leah nodded. "Keep me posted, and patch in GDAS tactical feed so we can share data." Alvarez hesitated, gaze flicking upward at the clear night sky. "Commander, what do you think it is?" Leah considered the stars. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's why we've trained for moments like this." She squared her shoulders. "Tonight, Earth's fate may hinge on a single scan. Let's make sure we read the signal before it's too late." As they hurried inside, the 1,000 lights of Geneva blinked on, mirroring the distant stars, and none of them could guess how swiftly the sky above would erupt in fire, or how quickly the Empire would learn that Earth, unarmed though it seemed, held secrets that could turn the cosmos inside out. The final countdown had begun. At 14:37 UTC, The vacuum of space above Earth erupted in a flash of light. 7 colossal vessels of the Empire's 7th conflagration fleet strike cruisers, larger than entire city-states, materialized in close formation just beyond geosynchronous orbit. Their sleek, obsidian hulls absorbed sunlight, rendering them as dark silhouettes against the blue planet. In an instant, they blotted out the sun for millions below, casting Earth into premature twilight. On every continent, satellites detected the drop-in from faster-than-light travel. Automated alerts flared in control centers and observatories. Unidentified massive object orbital intersection imminent. Seconds later, the hulking warships aligned their dorsal batteries on key targets: Vandenberg Space Force Base, the Russian Orbital Defense Station, China's Tiangong Relay, and the International Space Coalition's flagship antenna in Dakar. As the beams locked on, humanity's response hubs raced through protocols that had never been intended for a foe so vast. First salvo, plasma torpedoes. Moments after emergence, the Empire's cruisers unleashed their opening barrage, radiant blue plasma torpedoes. Hundreds of them streaked toward Earth's orbital defenses, leaving trails of incandescent ionized gas on the ISC's command deck in Geneva. Alarms screamed as radar screens lit up with converging vectors. Impact zone in T-30 seconds, Lieutenant Patel reported. Commander Leah Chen's order was immediate. All orbital platforms, brace and return fire. A patchwork network of planetary defense lasers, relics from the Cold War, era retrofitted for space roles, transitioned to full power. Beams of coherent light lanced into the void, trailing emerald shafts as they attempted to intercept the ferocious torpedoes. Against the plasma onslaught, the lasers performed valiantly. Dozens of torpedoes detonated mid-course, in brilliant blossoms of superheated vapor. But the Empire's warheads were tempered by exotic alloys and field stabilizers. Many penetrated the defensive wall to slam into the outer hull of the Dakar Ray, reducing a communications antenna to molten slag. Another breached the hull of the Russian station, setting off cascading depressurization alarms. Dakar has lost 50% comms capability, reported ISC comms officer Marisol Vega. Russian station life support failing. Coordinated global defense across the world. Nations sprang into action. In Arizona's desert, retired Space Force Colonel Derek Shaw supervised the activation of the Phoenix Railgun Array, an experimental ground-to-orbit cannon originally designed to hurl supply modules. Now, with Imperial fighters vectored into protect the cruisers, the railguns engaged enemy ships at extreme range, calculating lead. Shaw muttered, adjusting a holographic targeting sphere. The railgun's magnetic barrel glowed ominously as it accelerated tungsten flechettes to orbital velocities. A series of snapping reports echoed as shards punched through one cruiser's dorsal armor, gouging a smoking crater. Within the Empire's flagship, Tyrant's Gaze, the bridge shook violently. Admiral Kairos Varen's expression flickered between surprise and annoyance. Increase shield harmonics, he ordered. Scrub the target logs. Those vessels are resisting far more than anticipated. From hidden bunkers in the Alps to clandestine stations carved into the Mariana Trench, humanity's makeshift orbital grid fought back small platforms and commercial satellites repurposed as guns. Amateur astronomers' facilities enlisted to track trajectories. Even private company launchers pressed into service. The defense was chaotic, but the sheer quantity of fire staggered the attackers. The secret weapon in Geneva's subterranean command center. Leah Chen consulted Malik Cicada, ISC's lead theoretical physicist. The main tactical display showed the Empire's cruisers still advancing, shields flickering under concentrated bombardment. Malik, status of the phase array, Leah demanded. Malik wiped sweat from his brow. We're primed, Commander. The gravity well generators at 5 underground sites are synchronized. One more converter needs alignment before we can collapse a pocket of spacetime. Leah reviewed the data. Time to alignment, 90 seconds. Time until enemy fighters break through, 60. Her jaw clenched. Do it now. At for remote installations from the GDAS Arctic Research Station to Australia's Outback Gravitational Observatory, engineers jammed their hands in control interfaces. Energy coalesced into shimmering, prismatic fields. Gigawatts of power surged into the phase array's central node beneath Geneva. The hum of exotic machinery rose to an ear-splitting pitch. "Array engaged," Malik announced, generating a localized space-time distortion buffer. Chaos among the stars above the Pacific. Imperial fighters streamed out of the cruiser's bays. Sleek interceptor wingcraft bristling with disruptor cannons. Their mission: wipe out Earth's orbital platforms and clear the way for the main fleet. Within seconds, dogfights erupted, plasma fire and laser lances cutting through the darkness. But then reality itself trembled. Space around the fighters warped. Trails of light bent into impossible curves. One by one, the interceptors flickered like dying stars and vanished. On board the Tyrant's gaze, alarms wailed. Helix's voice quavered through the comms. "Sir, we're detecting massive spacetime fluctuations around the target cluster. Shields are destabilizing. If we don't disengage, the field will collapse on us." Varen's fist slammed the armrest. "Order a tactical withdrawal." "Impossible, Admiral." The tactical officer replied. "The collapse zone is expanding. Escape vectors are jammed by gravitational eddies." For a fleeting moment, the bridge fell silent. Then the flickering of consoles heralded the complete loss of external sensor input. The massive bulkheads groaned as if reality itself were flexing. 5 minutes to midnight on Earth. Every screen went black. For an agonizing heartbeat, humanity held its breath. Then, one by one, the monitors in Geneva flickered back to life only, to show empty space where the Empire's fleet had been moments before. The plasma torpedoes hanging mid-launch evaporated, leaving faint afterimages. Lieutenant Alvarez gasped, "They're gone. All of them, in the distance." Suborbital radar returned to normal. Communications uplinks reactivated. Satellite feeds resumed. Analysts pored over recordings. The impossibility was unanimous. No debris fields. No exploded hulls, just nothing. Commander Leah Chen exhaled so forcefully her headset rattled. "Report," she said. "Zero contacts," Patel confirmed. "No distress signals, no warp signatures. They simply vanished." On the Tyrant's gaze, Varen's final log entry remained suspended, proceeding with Operation Hammerfall. It would be the last message ever transmitted by the 7th Fleet. Aftermath in orbit. With the threat gone, humanity's makeshift defenses eased off their systems. Across the globe, people peered at the sky in bewilderment. News outlets scrambled to interpret the event's divine intervention, advanced alien trump cards, or Earth's lethal counterstrike. Each theory seemed wilder than the last. In Geneva, Leah convened an emergency briefing. "We may never know exactly what happened out there," she told her assembled allies. "But we do know this: we faced an enemy beyond anything our archives described, and we survived by daring to use a weapon we barely understood. Earth is no longer unarmed." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Now, we must learn from this miracle or risk facing it again without knowing how to defend ourselves." And far beyond the edge of detection, the silent void kept its secrets, as though the Empire had been erased not just from Earth's skies, but from the tapestry of the cosmos itself. Beneath Geneva's bedrock, in caverns guarded by elite International Space Coalition sentinels, the heart of Earth's ultimate gambit thrummed to life. The phase array, an audacious experiment born from desperation, drew power from 5 hidden gravity well generators scattered across the globe. Australia's Outback Station, Siberia's Permafrost Observatory, the GDA's Arctic Vault, South America's Amazon Research Node, and Geneva itself formed a pentagon of converging spacetime. Fisher's. Malik Sukkata's voice crackled over secure comms. All nodes reporting stable gravitational gradients. Quantum entanglement links holding at 97% coherence. Phase array will be fully aligned in 15 seconds. Commander Leah Chen stood rigid beside the main console, watching the countdown pulse across the holoscreen. Around her, the assembled chiefs of staff: Chinese GDA Liaison General Wang Lei, Russian Defense Minister Admiral Volkov, Japanese Aerospace Consortium Director Nakamura, and EU Space Agency lead scientist Dr. Villeneuve held their breath. This weapon had never been tested at scale. If it failed, no one dared speak the words. 10-9, Malik continued. Each numeral seemed to echo through the cavern's steel-reinforced vaults outside. Seismic sensors registered the faintest quiver as exotic particles bent the local spacetime topology. Leah's jaw tightened. "Prepare to initiate collapse protocol on my mark," she ordered. 3, 2, 1. "Now," Malik shouted. He slammed a palm onto the activation console, and a ripple raced through the facility, a shimmering wave of light, bending reality around them. In the command center above, monitors flickered, then steadied to reveal a new holographic overlay, a spherical distortion zone, centered on Earth's geostationary belt, slowly expanding outward. 2. First encounters with the unseen outside Earth's atmosphere. The 7th Fleet's cruisers still reeling from humanity's improvised railgun. Strikes lunged forward to press their advantage. Fighter wings swarmed through the void, eager to finish off the scattered survivors of Earth's orbital bastions. Plasma disruptors flared as interceptor darts homed in on suborbital platforms. On the bridge of the Tyrant's Gaze, Admiral Kairos Varine watched the displays with a grimace. "Proceed with ground assault," he ordered. "We still have overwhelming firepower." Then, as if their movements had been scripted by an unseen hand, the warship's inertial dampeners faltered. Consoles lit up with cascading error messages. Inertial stabilization failure. Shield matrix unstable. Sensor feed disruption. The fleet halted in place, suspended mid-attack, as space itself quivered around them. Lieutenant Helix tried to reconfigure the shield frequencies. "Admiral, the distortion field is interfering with our subspace channels. We can't maintain structural integrity if we don't withdraw. The field will spaghettify the hull." Varen's fist clenched. "Pull back, reverse all thrusters." But the cruisers refused to obey. Instead, they rotated in place as though caught in a colossal cosmic whirlpool, their hulls flexing under unseen pressures. Fighter squadrons found themselves tumbling in zero-G, their thrusters misfiring as the distortion bent the trajectories of their weapons. A wing of interceptors blinked out of existence when their flight paths intersected a subsumed pocket of warped SPACETIME.3. The collapse expands back in Geneva. Leah and Malik watched the distortion sphere blossom into a pulsing globe that reached from 20,000 to 40,000 kilometers above Earth's surface. The holomap showed warship icons inside the bubble flickering and then disappearing one by one. "Do we have visual confirmation?" Leah asked, voice tight. General Wang Lei peered at the live feeds from the GDAS Arctic Observatory. "Infrared imaging shows intense heat signatures around the cruisers. Then, nothing. It's as if they were unmade." Dr. Villeneuve frowned. "No wreckage, no debris fields, no energy residue, complete erasure." Malik's eyes were wide with awe. "The pocket collapse didn't just disable them, it removed them from our spacetime continuum." 4. Moments of Terran. The ISS, long since evacuated to lunar orbit. Autonomous cameras recorded the distortion's bloom. From Earth's surface, amateur astronomers caught glimpses of shifting stars and arcs of light bending around the horizon. For those who saw it, the sky became a living kaleidoscope. Constellations danced out of alignment, streaks of iridescent aurora flickered across daylight skies, and time itself appeared to stutter, as if reality hiccuped. PED. In the cockpit of a Japanese Aegis interceptor, pilot LT Nakamura gripped her controls as the distortion wave engulfed her craft. Instruments went haywire, altimeter, gyroscope, chrono all spun wildly. She radioed Geneva. "I don't know what's happening. Feels like gravity's turned inside out. Half my sensors have died." Then, just as suddenly as it began, her craft reappeared hundreds of kilometers off course, systems rebooting without explanation. 5. The vanishing 6 for 5 minutes, and 12 seconds forever etched into Earth's collective memory. The distortion held. Imperial warships vanished, fighter squadrons evaporated. The very fabric of spacetime tore open and then snapped shut again, leaving behind no sign of the invaders. On the Tyrant's Gaze, where Admiral Varen's final log had paused mid-sentence, interface panels glowed with undelivered commands. The last entries, hold position, initiate, withdraw, faded without resolution. Somewhere in the dark gulf of space, the empires might simply cease to exist. 6. The aftershock when humanity's sensors finally stabilized, they registered an empty orbit. Satellites drifted in geosynchronous ring, unmolested. Plasma torpedoes hung in vacuum, then vaporized like mist under the sun's glare. The Earth-Moon system exhaled a collective sigh. On every continent, relief and astonishment warred with fear. News networks interrupted programming to broadcast grainy videos of an empty sky. Governments declared states of emergency. Yet celebrations erupted in city squares and village greens alike. People wept at the realization that the impossible had occurred and that their world had been spared by the slenderest of margins. In the ISC's makeshift war room, Leah sank into her chair, hands trembling. Malik placed a steadying palm on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it." Leah stared at the holo display showing the completed collapse. "No," she whispered, voice raw. "We barely understood what we unleashed. We may have saved Earth, but we've opened a door we can't yet close." 7. New horizons and new fierces the world celebrated. A profound unease settled over the leaders of Earth. They had pulled victory from the jaws of annihilation, but at what cost? The space-time tethers that held their planet's fabric together had been manipulated, and the price of such power, they realized, could be devastating if mishandled. In secret bunkers, scientists began poring over every data point from the phase array. Militaries drafted new doctrines for interdimensional risk, and Leah Chen, haunted by the sight of vanishing stars, resolved that humanity's next frontier would not simply be exploration, but understanding the fundamental rules of reality itself. Because beyond the dark veil where the Empire once stood, a silent question lingered in the void. Had Earth truly erased its conquerors, or had it unleashed forces that would one day return to demand their price? Dawn broke hesitantly over Earth, as if the planet itself was cautious to begin another day after the night's unfathomable events. In Geneva, Leah Chen emerged from the subterranean command center into the pale morning light, blinking against the glare. The streets were quiet, eerily so, for the usual bustle of a city at the nexus of global affairs was supplanted by hushed crowds gathered around news holoboards. Grainy footage replayed the 5 minutes of the distortion wave, stars warping, imperial ships dissolving, and then blank space. People on sidewalks watched in stunned silence. Mouths agape, a child tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering, "Mom, was it magic?" The mother could only shake her head. No ready answer existed. Leah straightened her uniform jacket, feeling the weight of a world changed forever. To global response. Mid-morning, government offices on every continent were in full crisis mode, though the crisis now carried the flavor of triumph. UN Secretary General Amina Diallo convened a special session of the Security Council in New York via secure holo link. Heads of state and defense ministers hovered above the chamber, eyes reddened from sleepless nights. "Colleagues," Diallo began, voice firm, "we have witnessed an event without precedent, the eradication of a hostile fleet through means we barely comprehend. Our first duty is to secure Earth's safety. Our second is to understand what we have unleashed." Across the table, Russian Admiral Volkov tapped his stylus on the holodays. "The GDAS analysis confirms no wreckage, no radiation signatures, nothing. It is as if our enemy never existed. We must establish an independent commission to study the space-time collapse." China's General Wang Lei chimed in, "Agreed, but we also need to bolster defenses. If this phase array can erase fleets, we need backup arrays, mobile platforms, and protocols to prevent accidental activation." A chorus of assent rippled through the council. Plans were set in motion. The creation of the Global Spacetime Authority, GSA, to regulate, study, and safeguard the new technology. An accelerated build-out of secondary distortion generators to form a planetary shield grid. And an international treaty to forbid unilateral use without unanimous consent. 3. Scientific gold rush. In the weeks that followed, universities and research institutes became hives of feverish activity. The phase array, once a whispered rumor, was now Earth's most coveted prize. Computer clusters around the globe ran models of spacetime lattices. Particle physicists debated the ethics of further tampering with fundamental forces. At CERN, Dr. Eleanor Rossi stood before a wall of data projections. If we can map the collapse waveform, she told her team, we might control smaller, surgical distortions opening wormholes for instant travel, or bending light for stealth applications. A young postdoc raised his hand. But what about stability? Could repeated use fracture our local space-time continuum? Elena paused, the gravity of the question resonating in her mind. Exactly why we need the GSAS oversight, she replied. In augmented reality classrooms, students marveled at simulations of parallel dimensions and quantum foam. Private investors poured fortunes into startup labs, promising everything from teleportation pods to temporal communication devices. The boundary between science fiction and science fact blurred by the day. For political reverberations, geopolitical map shifted almost overnight. Nations that had feuded for decades now sat side by side in research coalitions. Defense pacts rewrote their charters to incorporate spacetime risk management. Smaller states lobbied fiercely for equitable access to the technology, fearing a new arms race worse than any before. In Brasilia, Brazil's president hosted the first summit of the Global South's distortion diplomacy bloc, advocating for safeguards to prevent wealthy powers from monopolizing spacetime control. In Moscow, protests erupted as activists demanded transparency on Russia's own gravitational research. In Tokyo, factions argued over whether the Japanese arc array should be repurposed for civilian transit or kept dormant for defense. Meanwhile, Leah Chen found herself traveling constantly, addressing parliaments, testifying before defense committees, and chairing the inaugural meeting of the GSAS Provisional Council. She carried the weight of Earth's gamble in her words. We cannot unlearn what we've done. Our responsibility now is stewardship. 5. Cultural reflections. Artists and writers drew inspiration from the vanishing fleet. A German filmmaker premiered a documentary, 5 Minutes of Infinity, blending eyewitness interviews with CGI recreations of the distortion wave. Poets in Istanbul wrote verses about the sky unmaking itself, while street murals in Cape Town depicted luminous ripples snaking across the globe. Religious leaders wrestled with theological implications. Some spoke of divine will protecting humanity, others warned of hubris in playing God. Interfaith councils convened to debate whether the phase array was a gift or a curse, and whether its usage required ritual or secular restraint. In homes and cafes, people debated the Nyctherby phenomenon, reports of subtle headaches, dream disturbances, and a collective sense of what if. As though Earth's near annihilation left an imprint on human consciousness, psychologists set up hotlines for spacetime trauma survivors, those who'd witnessed the event directly and felt the world fracture around them. 6. Preparing for tomorrow. 6 months after the fateful 5 minutes, Earth's orbit was dotted with prototype distortion buoys, smaller, controlled versions of the original phase array nodes. Security protocols were layered, dual key systems requiring multiple nations' sign-offs, AI monitors to detect unauthorized energy surges, and manual fail-safes coded into stone vaults deep underground. In Geneva, Leah stood before the primary control interface, no longer a wartime emergency panel, but a symbol of collective hope and caution. She keyed in the ceremonial sequence that would activate the first peacetime test, a tiny, localized fluctuation barely wide enough to refract a laser beam. Diplomats from 50 nations watched on screens as the field shimmered, then collapsed. Harmlessly, applause erupted, yet Leah felt no triumph, only resolve. The future was open, filled with possibilities she could scarcely imagine. Interstellar gateways, time-slipped communications, starship drives powered by spacetime engineering. But with that promise came peril, accidental rifts, weaponization by rogue states, or destabilization of the cosmic balance itself. She turned to Malik Cicada, who stood at her side. "We've come so far," she said softly. "Every step forward must be taken with eyes wide open." He nodded. "The universe just taught us a lesson. Control is the greatest challenge of all." 7. Epilogue. A new covenant. Far above, in the silent reaches where the Empire once hovered, only emptiness remained. No floating wrecks, no drifting survivors, just the yawning void. Perhaps the Seventh Fleet had been erased utterly, or perhaps banished to some alternate continuum. Whatever the truth, one fact endured: Earth had prevailed against an interstellar dominion and lived to tell the tale. And so, humanity forged a new covenant not with the stars, but with itself. Bound by the memory of those 5 imperiled minutes, every nation, culture, and creed pledged to wield the power of spacetime with wisdom, unity, and humility. The cosmos beckoned, and at last, Earth was ready to answer its summons cautiously, but unafraid.